Hi. Firstly, our group, which is me, Stephanie, Leanne, Henry, and Dylan, decided to do our presentation on intentional homicide, more specifically looking at victims by sex, region, and rates per 100,000 population. Intentional homicide, put simply, is a legal category defined as the unlawful death purposefully inflicted on a person by another person. To start, violent crime in today's society is a threat to the peace and security of countries around the world. In 2017, it was recorded that around 460,000 people were victims of intentional homicide globally. The analysis of data on such a prolific crime, being intentional homicide, is important for two reasons. First, it can act as a proxy, a sort of representation of violent crimes globally. What I mean by this is that since homicide is the most serious and common violent crime, it can indicate the overall level of violent crime occurring in a country. Secondly, it demonstrates the security and the degree of law enforcement in a country. Since international homicide can act as a broad crime indicator, it can influence policy and lawmaking. This map here highlights different homicide rates across various countries. This is representative of differing law enforcement and effective policies. These differing rates are also due to the actual term, intentional homicide, being defined differently from region to region in accordance with their own government laws.
The aim of this study is to investigate whether certain regions have higher homicide rates than others, and if homicide rates are affected by gender. Research question 1 is, which gender experiences higher rates of deaths caused by intentional homicide? Our hypothesis, one gender experiences a significantly higher rate of intentional homicides. Our second research question, does region affect the rate of intentional homicides? Our hypothesis, certain regions have higher rates of intentional homicides. Our third research question, what are the current trends, if any, with death due to intentional homicides? Our hypothesis, homicides per year increase or decrease in regions consistently over time.
This map shows the reliability and quality of the information that's about to be presented to you in the next slide. As we can see, many developing countries in Africa do not have a very high score, which could probably influence the data shown in the next slide. For our first research question, we asked whether any sex experiences higher rates of intentional homicide than the other. As shown by all the graphs provided, the males, marked in the darker color, clearly fall victim to more homicides than the women, marked in a lighter color. And we can also see that the abnormal shape of the data presented by Africa is caused due to the reported unreliability and inaccuracy of the continent's data over the recent years, which was discussed in the last slide. Our next question involves whether certain regions experience higher homicide rates than others. The data provided shows us that from 2017 to 2018, regions such as Africa and the Americas experienced much higher homicide rates than the other continents. Our final research question asks, what are the current trends in homicide rates? As we can see from the first graph, there is no clear trend, and every graph is remaining at a steady rate. From the second graph, we can see that from 2017 to 2018, the graph decreases very steeply. This is probably because some countries with previously high homicide rates decide to withhold information. However, in the next 10 years, the UN predicts that the global homicide rate will increase due to the increase in reliability and accuracy of developing countries.
So, in the discussion portion of this presentation, I'd just like to go over the trends that we've shown in our dataset and why we believe these trends may have occurred. First off, we showed that more than twice as many males as females across all regions died due to intentional homicide, and we believe this could be in part due to the fact that more than 90% of suspects in homicide cases were men, and this shows that men are more likely to be involved in intentional homicide, whether that be as perpetrators or as victims, and will thus be more likely to die due to intentional homicide. Secondly, we showed that the Americas have a rate of homicide and a total number of homicides far higher than all other regions, as we can see in this graph, where they nearly have twice as many deaths due to intentional homicide as all other regions combined in 2017 and 2018. And we believe this is due to the fact that the Americas has the United States of America in it, which has the highest percentage of gun ownership per capita, with 310 million guns in America in 2009. And since 54% of all intentional homicide victims were killed using firearms, we believe that this large amount of guns could be responsible for the large number of intentional homicides in the region. The overall trend also of intentional homicide deaths shows an upward trajectory for the Americas, which we again believe is in part caused by the large amount of guns in the region. However, we do have some issues with our dataset when we were analysing it. We found that there were some very large holes and gaps in our dataset, some countries not being counted inconsistently. Turkmenistan, for example, was not counted at all for the period of the year 2000 to 2018, and countries like Kazakhstan are just missing some years. No data was provided for 2016, but for some reason was provided for 2009 to 2015. And finally, the dataset that we analysed was provided by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which was a dataset they produced in 2018. Thank you for listening to this presentation.